All right, so for today on our notes, we're going to start by numbering these number 6. Okay, so these are going to be number 6. Our learning target for today, our goal is to be able to find the distance between 2 points. Now, as we saw in our math workshop today, if I wanted to know how far it is between 2 points, one of the easiest ways is to count across. All right, but unfortunately, sometimes counting isn't very easy on these graphs. All right, so I want us to take a moment and reflect. Let's think back to at Thanksgiving. We did those graphs with the pumpkin and the pilgrim hat. Do y'all remember doing those? All right, so some of us remember that. I see some people like making like a little bit of a face like in terror. Okay, so those graphs were kind of difficult because some of the points were not like this A is. See how it perfectly meets up where those two cross? If you think back to that pumpkin, some of the points were like in the middle of boxes, weren't they? Yes. And if they're in the middle of the box, that makes it a lot harder to count, to graph and to count. Okay, so I'm going to show you another technique for finding the distance that we can use for any 2 points. Yes, Alana?
Is this something on our test?
Yes, this is going to be the last new item for our test on Friday. That's a very good question. All right, so guys, if I want to know the distance from A to B, one of the obvious techniques to do is just to count it. So from A, if I start at A and I count, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right? So one of the most easy ways on this problem is to count. Is counting always going to be the best choice, though? No, if I have really big numbers, counting's going to get a little crazy. All right? Plus, I don't want to have to draw a giant graph. All right. Also, if my dots were in the middle of a box, that would make counting a lot harder, wouldn't it? Okay. So we're going to learn another strategy for finding the distance. All right. The first thing that I need to know in order to use this strategy is the coordinates for point A. Remember, a coordinate is where we have x, comma, y. So raise your hand if you can tell me what is the coordinate for point A. Skylar? -2, comma 3. And we need to make sure that we put that inside of parentheses. Okay? Let's go ahead and look at the coordinates for B. Raise your hand if you can tell me coordinates for B. Reagan?
-4 and -2.
Okay, so I see where we got the -4 from. I see where we got the -2 from. But remember, it's always X first. You got to crawl before you can walk. So what was the X that went for B? -2. So we have to do that the other way, -2 and then -4, making sure with a comma and parentheses. Okay. All right. So our goal here is to find the distance between those, not by counting, but by looking at these two ordered pairs for right now. Okay. So here's my question. If I'm wanting to find the distance between -2, 3 and -2, -4, if I look at these -2's, does that help me find how far is in between them?
No.
No, because aren't the -2's the exact same?
Yes.
Okay, which is important because look, if I draw my line, what does it go through? -2. So that -2 is important for graphing, but is that -2 going to help me find the distance? No, because it already matches. So what I'm going to do, guys, I'm not going to draw a full X. I'm not going to color it out. I'm just going to draw a light line through there. Because when I'm using these to find the distance, that -2 doesn't matter because it already matches. Okay, are we okay with that so far? All right. On Monday we talked about absolute value. So real quick, before we talk about the next step, can someone remind me, what does absolute value do? Ashaya? It measures the distance. So some of us have been looking at that Quizlet. Awesome job. Good. Some of us are going to look at it some more. Okay. So the absolute value measures the distance, correct? And what are we trying to find right now? The distance. So absolute value is actually going to apply here. Okay. So first of all, let's think about this. This is the coordinate we care about, right? So what is the absolute value of 3? 3? Do y'all agree with that?
Yes.
What is the absolute value of -4?
-4.
Just 4, okay? All right. Now the rule for this is a little bit maybe more difficult. All right. Do y'all see how this crosses the axis? Okay. If it crosses an axis, you are going to add them together. Because what do I get if I do 3, those two numbers that we just got, if I do 3 plus 4, what does that give me? 7. So if it crosses an axis, because one went in one direction, the other one went in the other direction, to find the distance, we're going to add them, and that gives me 7. What did we say earlier when we counted? How far did we get? Didn't we count out 7?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Also in our math workshop, we talked about what the spaces on a graph are called. What are they called? The spaces on a graph. What did we call those in our math workshop this morning? Remember, distance is a measurement, right? So distance has to be measuring how far something is. Do I know about feet or inches or anything like that on this graph? No, it didn't give me a measurement, so what word do we use? Ava? Units, because that just represents any measurement at all. That means it could be any measurement that we want to fill in. Okay. All right. That's what we're going to be doing on all of our problems today. Okay. So let's look at our next one. All right, so we're going to move all the way down to the bottom. Those steps, it gave us like 5 different steps. We're not following the steps it gives us, okay? Because that made it more confusing for the other classes, so I changed it up on us. All right, so now let's look at number 1 here. All right, so we want to find the distance between U and V. Do y'all see that? Okay, again, the graph is numbered by 1, so this is going to be easy to count out. So if I count this out, how much is that going to count? 1, 2, 3. So right now, what do you think my answer is going to be?
3.
3 what?
Units.
3 units. Okay, so that's my answer. Guys, I still want us to be able to do the other technique where we're adding or subtracting, because on your homework tonight, you're not going to be able to count easily on all of them, okay? So this is still important that we write this down. All right, can someone tell me the ordered pair for U? What is the coordinate for U? Skylar? 1, -3. Very good. What is the coordinate for V? What is the coordinate for V? Nick? 4, -3. Okay, so now we need to find the distance between U and V. We've already counted out, but let's do the other math to check and make sure it's correct. For U and V, if I'm trying to find the distance, which numbers do I not care about? Ashaya? Which one? Okay, so I see where you're getting that, because if I look back at the first problem, I marked out the x's, didn't I? All right, but what's special about those x's? They're the same number, right? Can I find the distance between a -2 and a -2? No, because they're in the same place. Here, can I find the distance between a -3 and a -3? No. So it's not that we're marking out the x's, we're marking out the numbers that match. Okay? So now I'm looking at 1 and 4. So here we have a 1. What's the absolute value of 1? 1. What's the absolute value of 4? 4. And again, I'm using absolute value because absolute value tells me distance. Do y'all agree with that? All right, now there's something different about this problem. All right, up here, we said because it crosses an axis, we're going to add them. Because this went 3 above the x, 4 below, so we added it together. Is this one crossing a line? No, they're both going to the right of the y-axis. So these are in the same, very close, same quadrant is the word. Same quadrant, which is basically the bottom box, okay? Same quadrant. Y'all agree that line is all in the same quadrant, the same box down there? Okay? Because it's in the same quadrant, we're not going to add, but we're going to Subtract. All right, one good way to remember this, same starts with the same letter as subtract. So if they're in the same quadrant, you're going to subtract. What numbers am I subtracting here?
4 and 1.
4 and 1, those absolute values. And that gives me
3 units.
3 units, which is what we got as our answer, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So let's look at this S and this T. All right. What's my ordered pair for S? Alana?
2.
All right, so 2 and 4 are important, but remember it's always X,
4
comma,
and 2.
4, 2. That's okay. And then my T, Alex?
It's 4, 2.
4, negative 2. Okay, now this one's a little bit trickier to decide what to mark out. Because right now, my 4 and 4 look like they match, and then they also both have 2's. But which ones are the exact same? Addison?
4.
The 4's. Why are the 2's not exactly the same? Isaac?
Because one of the 2 which has the T, 2 has a negative on it.
This 2 is positive. The T's 2 is negative. All right? So we marked out the 4's. So now I need to know the absolute value of both of these numbers, right? Okay, absolute value of 2 is 2. Absolute value of negative 2 is 2. Because again, absolute value finds the distance. If we say it enough, maybe we'll get that vocabulary word right on the test. All right? Okay, guys, what's happening here? Is it in the same quadrant, or are we crossing?
Crossing.
So we're crossing an axis. All right, guys, here's kind of another way to remember crossing. If you make a plus sign, don't those 2 lines cross each other?
Yes.
Get it? Okay. So we're going to add those because they cross a line. So when I add those, 2 plus 2, what do we get here, Ashaya? 4 what? 4 units. Very good. Could I look back over here and count it to make sure?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We get kindergarten.
All right, so guys, we're going to flip it over. This back page is actually your homework, but I want us to look at number 3 together, okay? So you're going to do the back page, but we're going to look at number 3 together.
Okay.
All right, so for number 3, this one doesn't have the letters on the graph for me, but it does give me the coordinates. All right, so here's the cool thing, guys. We can use the coordinates to find the distance, but don't I need to know which quadrants they're in?
Yes.
So we're still going to need to graph it. All right, what do you notice about the numbers on this graph? Alex?
Half are negative and half are positive.
Well, half are negative and half are positive. That's true. That should be on every graph. What else do we notice about this graph? Ava? It doesn't have all the numbers. What are we numbering by? 2's. We're numbering by 2. So we need to be careful. Guys, I'm also going to point out, so the positives start with 2. So what should the negative lines have started with? A negative 2. Did they write the negative 2 in? No. If you want to add that in, we can. It might come in handy in a little bit when we do some math. Okay? So we got our negatives 2's. So let's try to graph these numbers. All right? Letter C, when we graph that point, it should be at negative 3, comma, negative 6. The negative 3 is on which line? Alex?
Well, it wouldn't be on a line. It'd be in the middle of 4 and 2.
Very good. So when I'm looking for negative 3 on the X, because it's first, it should be between negative 4 and negative 2. Now, does that have a place for it? No. But if I want to, just so I remember, I'm going to put a little mark there so I remember, hey, negative 3 is in the middle of those. And then I'm going to go down and I'm going to find negative 6 on the Y. There it is. So there's where I marked negative 3. I'm going to go all the way down until I get to negative 6, and I'm going to put a point. What point is that called? C. That's C, right? It was named C. Okay. My next one is also at negative 3. Do y'all see why if I put that little mark there, it helps me remember? Because I'm using the same spot. So negative 3, there it was. Where is negative 1 going to be, though? Where's negative 1, Jorge? Between 0 and the negative 2. So negative 3 was in the middle, and negative 1 is in the middle, so this dot is actually going to be in the middle of a box. Are y'all okay with that? All right, and that is point D. All right, so here's my question, guys. We don't have to draw a line connecting them. You can. Counting this out is going to be hard, isn't it? Because one of the dots is in the very middle of the box. But I don't have to count it out. Which one, now that I graphed them, which of these can I mark out? Which of these do I not care about if I'm finding the distance? Alex?
-3.
The -3. We can mark that out because they already match. Okay. All right, so that means I need the absolute value of -6, which is 6. And I need the absolute value of -1, which is 1. Okay? Am I adding them or subtracting them? Subtracting them. How did you know you were subtracting them?
They're in the same quadrant.
They're in the same quadrant. So we're going to do 6 minus 1 because they're in the same quadrant. So we subtract. What does that give me?
5.
5. So my answer here is 5 units. 5 units. If I wanted to double check, remember this is numbered by 2's. So that would be 2, 4, and then that's only halfway there, so that would be 5. Or you could count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Yes, Ashai?